Hello patrons, welcome back to another tutorial series. So in this series we're going to be focusing on drawing a realistic dog using coloured pencils. So as you can see, I have already done the background, and this was actually for part of a tutorial series for anyone that's a $9 patron. So we were focusing on drawing the flowers and also getting more of a blurry out of focus background. So if you want, you can just do the dog on its own. I have attached a reference photo of just the dog and then one of the flowers as well, because I kind of merged two different photos together to get the dog looking in more of a interesting background rather than it just being plain, which it was in the original reference photo. And if you do want to watch me create the flowers and everything, then like I said, that is available for $9 patrons and above. So what we're going to do in this series is focus on getting a realistic looking fur. I have tried to pick a type of dog that has a lot of long fur as well as short fur, so I can show you how you would change your technique for the different types of fur. So also he has big eyes, so I can really show you all of the details in the eyes, and also there's white fur in this as well, which I thought is great because I find a lot of you find white fur quite challenging because you still need to make it look like it's got depth and shadow, but it can't all just be white. So I thought that would be really great as well. I also picked a more interesting angle rather than straight on. So it's more in a interesting, fun sort of angle where you're kind of looking up and he's lying down and amongst the flowers. So what we're going to be doing in this part is starting by working on the eyes. So I like to get the eyes in first, no matter whether I'm drawing a person or an animal. I like to get in the eyes first, and we're going to be using the Caran d'Ache Luminance coloured pencils. So I'm going to run through with you what colours we're going to be using just for the eyes. Not for the fur, we'll be using different colours for the fur, but for the eyes I've picked a selection of colours that I've already kind of thought about and thought what would look good in certain areas. So a way that you can choose what colours will best suit each area is going onto something like Paint, so the software on your computer, import the reference photo and use the eyedropper tool on different areas and see which ones best match your coloured pencil set. So you can make a colour swatch of your colours, put it next to the area that you want to draw and see which one best matches it. So let me run through the colours that I'm going to be using and where I'll be using them. So the lightest colour that I'm actually using is the Buff Titanium, which is more of a cream off-white tone, and this is going to be used for like the white of the eye, because the white of the eye isn't actually white. It's got a bit of cream and yellow tones in it as well. I'm also going to be using, for the white of the eye, a bit of the colour Manganese Violet. So this is more of a purple tone, and it might seem a bit weird to use a bit of purple in the white of the eye, but we won't be using too much, and when I look at the reference photo, it's got a tint of purple to it. So I'm also going to be using the French Grey 10%, and this is going to be for the lighter areas that are a bit grey here. And I'll also be using some other greys as well. So another grey that I'm using is the Steel Grey, and this is for more of the highlighted area that's a bit more blue toned and is a bit more cooler toned rather than being warm like the French Grey is. So another grey that I'm using is the Violet Grey. So particularly in the highlights there's a bit of more purpley tint, so I'm going to use the Violet Grey for that. There's a lot of greys in the eye as well as browns. So I'm also going to be using the Sepia 50%. So this is like a nice grey brown tone, which is a bit lighter. And as well as the Sepia 50%, I'm using just the Sepia, which is obviously a really dark brown. I'll also be using black, and I'll probably be using the Polychromos black as well because that gets a bit darker. And I'll be using the Prussian blue because I find that the pupils have a bit of blue to them, and it also helps make it look like it's got more depth rather than just being flat black. And the very last colour that I'm using is some slate grey for some darker areas that are a bit more grey. And those are the colours that I'm going to be using. You don't have to use these exact colours. I recommend having some warmer toned greys. So normally in the set it will say cold grey or warm grey. A blue, so like an indigo blue or any type of dark blue for like overlapping onto the pupil. I recommend having like a nice little purple colour for a bit of that purple tint in the white of the eye, and a cream tone, so it might be something like ivory, and that will be good for the white of the eye, and also a brown as well, and just a mixture of greys. But anyway, I'm going to zoom us in so we can get right up close to this eye, and then we're going to colour it in. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to establish the darkest areas on the pupil and around the eye. So to do this, I am going to be using the black. So I'm just going to grab that black pencil, put the other colours to the side for now. And so I'm going to work on this eye first. And what I want to do is look at the reference photo. I've got the reference photo in front of me, and it is roughly about the same size as the drawing. I've enlarged it to about the same size, so it's easier for me to judge where everything's going. And because I've already got an accurate sketch, it's quite simple to see where these shadows need to go. So I'm just following along the reference photo, and I'm just shading in the blackest areas. There is a lot of shadow within this eye, but I'm just shading in those black areas. Not pressing too hard at the moment. So I will be leaving the highlights completely white for now. So I'm really concentrating on the reference photo, especially when I'm putting in the black colours, because I don't want to get this anywhere where it shouldn't be. So it's really important to focus on the reference photo when you're using these dark colours. It's really easy, even if you've done a sketch, to kind of go off course and go off track. So I am burnishing that pencil into the paper, which means I am pressing quite hard on it. You can see that it goes quite dark all the way up, but there is this thin area which I'm going to block out so that I don't get that too dark, where it's just more of a brown tone. So I'm going all the way around the eye. I do like to jump around a bit when I'm doing this. So you've got some of the hairs reflected as well. Some of the eyelashes, I mean. So I'm also just going to block in some of the black around the eye as well. Okay, so I'm nearly done with this. Now I'm going to go in with, let's think. Let's get in the white of the eye. Let's work on that now. Now that we've got all the shadows blocked in. So first I'm going to add a layer of the, what was it? Manganese violet, that purpley tone. Just a little bit, just where that blue tint is. I'm actually going to lower this down a bit, add a bit more black shading. Okay. So I'm just adding this purpley tone wherever I can see it on the reference photo. It's just where these more shadowed areas are. And like I said, even though it might seem strange to add purple to the white of the eye, just follow what your reference photo does. If your colour matches the reference photo, then use it, even if it does seem strange. I'm also going to go in with the violet grey for some of these shadows. I'm going to add a bit of the French grey 10% as well. I'm adding this particularly where that more shadowed area is, just under the iris. And I'm just going to add a little bit of the sepia. Just a little bit. And on this side where it's more shadowed, just to create those little veins. So now I'm going to go in with that buff titanium and blend that all out. To get a smooth look. It might look dark at the moment, but once we've got everything else in around it, then it won't look that dark in comparison. Okay, so I'm just going to use this brush to knock away all of the bits of coloured pencil. And so now I'm going to start to fill in this lower portion here. So to do that, I'm going to be using the sepia and the sepia 50%. So I'm first going to add a layer of sepia 50%, just a light layer, just to these areas that are this more grey-brown tone. Again, because there's lots of detail in this iris, I want to really concentrate. This bit actually needs to be black, so I'm just going to fill that in. So I'm just adding a layer of the sepia 50% to this lower area. And also some sepia where it's more shadowed. And this is a dark brown, so bear that in mind, that it's a brown tone. If the area is more grey, then you need more of a grey colour. So I'm just going throughout the drawing and just adding the sepia 50% anywhere where it is on the reference photo. Add a little bit more sepia 50%. I'm going to leave that for now, and I'm going to go and work on the highlights. So the first colour that I want to add to the highlights is the steel grey. This is more of a blue toned grey, just like the highlight, so I'm just going to add this to the highlight. I'm going to go in with the slate grey for some of the darker grey areas within the highlights. I'm going to use a bit of violet grey. And down here as well. So now I'm going to add some more sepia. Add some more detail into this part here. Some of the little markings. I need to actually add a bit more black. So I'm just filling in these little black areas. I'm going to cover this part in with the sepia. Down here. Also going to use the violet grey. And you can see already that it's starting to look quite realistic. I'm going to use a bit of the black as well to darken this part up. Just going to add some steel grey to this little stripe. And here. Going to add a bit of sepia 50%. I think that area is too light. Add in some more black. I think drawing the eyes is probably my favourite part of drawing a person or an animal. I'm going to add a bit of buff titanium just for the highlights. I'm loving the way this eye is looking. Just going to add some sepia down here as well. Going to use some of titanium to bring out the highlight. I always like to take the most time on the eye because I feel like it's the part that you really look at. It's one of the focal points and it really sets the expression, and I think it's just such an important key aspect of a drawing. Especially with a person, it's probably a very recognizable feature of someone, and if you mess up the eye, then it might not look at them at all. Like if you get the nose a bit off or the mouth, chances are it'll probably still be able to look like them, but if you mess up an eye, then it really affects the drawing. So if you get the eyes spot on, then it really helps. So I just want to give this eye a little bit of saturation, so I'm just going to go in with a bit of brown ochre, just a little bit, and just add a bit of saturation in the bottom there. Not too much. Might add a bit more with the raw sienna. You can change certain things if you want, like I want to make it a bit more vibrant than the reference photo. Gonna go in again with the burnt sienna, the sienna 50%. And the sepia. I just want to go in a little bit with the white pencil, so I'm just going to sharpen it briefly. I just want to do this little light area here, and this will help create a bit of shine for us, which would be really cool. Really make it look watery. Just this nice bit of shine on there. I want to fix the shape of the eye there. We've now got that bit of shine. Add a bit of shine down here as well. There we go. I'm just going to work a little bit on this outside bit of fur. I'm just adding the sepia 50%. Just shading in this area. So I'm just looking at the direction that the fur is going around the eye. So I'm just going to use a bit of sepia. Okay, so nearly finished on this eye. Just want to blend it together with the French grade 10% just to soften it all out, make sure there's no grainy areas. Go back in with the sepia. Make sure you get that contrast again. I'm going to sharpen my black and go in again with the black. First, I want to add a bit of the Prussian blue on top of the black. So like I said, this will add more depth. So anywhere where there's black, I'm just giving it a bit of this Prussian blue to the pupil. So I'm now going to go in with the black Polychromos pencil. And I'm just going to use that to make the black areas even darker. This can just get things that step darker. So I'm going in with a bit more sepia as well. So back in with the buff titanium, pull up these highlights again. Going to use the steel grey again. Going in again with the black. So I'm also darkening up the black areas down here. So now I'm just tweaking little details until I'm happy with this eye, and then we can move on to the other eye. I'm just going to add a little bit of burnt sienna. I'm also just going to create that highlight underneath there. So I'm just lightening up this area. I'm going to pull up some more of the highlights. Adding a bit of burnt sienna at 50% now. Just adding a bit of the sepia again. Okay, so I'm going to leave that eye for now, and we're going to move on to this eye over here. So I'm just going to take this over a bit. Okay. So now we're going to work over on this side. We'll be using exactly the same colours. Okay. So again, I'm going to use the exact same process. So the first thing that I'm going to do is again block in the darkest shadows with the black. So the black is a bit blunt, so I'm just going to sharpen it. You always want to start with a sharp pencil and keep your pencil sharp. Okay, use a brush to get rid of any little bits of coloured pencil. Now let's start by blocking in the blackest areas. So again, I'm going to do this lightly to start with, and then I will use more pressure to finalise the shadows. I'm going to outline where the black needs to go. So I'm really focusing on where the blackest areas are. It's very easy to get confused with your sketch and mix different parts of the sketch up, especially if you've done quite a detailed sketch. I'm lightly shading in some of the lighter, not quite black areas, but still just like a lighter shade of black, like a really light grey, but within that black range, if that makes sense. I'm just going to erase this one line. Just going to start a bit further down. There we go. Now I'm going to just start adding some of those darker tones. So first add in that burnt cyan, the sepia 50%. Add in that colour. Adding that violet grey across here for that lighter area, and then also shading some of the sepia 50% over the top. Add a tiny bit of the buff titanium. Again, violet grey to this area. Add in the sepia over here. Added in that buff titanium. Gonna add in the steel grey as well. I'm going to go and add in the white of the eye. Gonna again add some of that purpley colour to it. Add a bit of the French grey 10%. Add that all over. Adding in the violet grey. I'm going to add some sepia as well. Using the black again. I'm going to use buff titanium now to blend out the white of the eye. Gonna add a bit of sepia. Add a bit more French grey. Add some of that raw sienna as well. Add some more of that manganese violet. And I'm gonna press down hard with this buff titanium to get the highlight. So this eye is looking good as well. Just going to work on the shadowed areas underneath the eye. Just add some of this shading up here. We will be working on that once we start working on the fur. Now I'm going in with the black. So again, just keep building up those shadows until it's where you need it to be. So even though I added black to some areas, obviously once you start adding more colours it can lighten up if you add lighter colours on top of it, so it's always good to go back in at the end with the black just to darken up any areas that have got a bit too light. Just add a bit of shading with the sepia. That's nearly it for this part. Just want to get the white pencil and add some little final highlights. I really recommend these pencil extenders. They do make it so much easier to draw with small pencils and to get the most out of your pencils. And they're really cheap, so it's definitely worth having a few in your drawing supplies. Okay, I want to add a little bit of blue as well to the eye. So just on that pupil in the center. Add a bit of brown ochre to that highlighted area. Okay, and so that's it for the eyes for now, pretty much. So next we're going to be working on getting in some of the fur. So I'm going to show you how you can draw short fur and then the longer fur. We'll probably actually work our way either from around the eyes outwards or just work from the left to the right. I'm not sure how I want to do it yet, but I will see you guys in the next part. Bye everyone.